I ain't gonna lie, Expedition 33 has left a giant stain in the AAA scene. I'm gonna be honest with you, chat. It has definitely left its mark in a big way and says that yes, you can create a game and not have to spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to make a game. And I'm curious to see on Bellular News to see what he thinks about it actually. So I always love watching this guy.
If we're lucky, gaming is going to have a bright future and you will be eating good. And the reason why is embodied in this quote. We have the tech now to make those games with a relatively small team. Games like this are coming. We are lucky to be early. Now, those words came from Guillaume, who is the creative director of Clair Obscura Expedition 33, and he was talking to the New York Times. And honestly, in a way, he is describing 2025. A year of games made by smaller teams, built by ex-AAA talent, using every tech and industry trick available to somehow compete with the biggest studios in the world, and actually winning on their own terms.
I'm waiting for someone to make a Call of Duty competitor, to be honest. I'm really waiting for some indie developer to make a Call of Duty competitor. Thank you for the follow. Welcome.
Audiences. If he's saying that they were early and more is coming, then we have a lot to look forward to. But unfortunately, reality is a little bit more complicated than that. Game of the Year, 8 other awards, 5 million sales since April. It's all kind of insane. What we see is that Expedition 33 isn't just some well-received game that kind of defined the year, because if it was just that, we'd be equally talking about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 or Silksong. Just that, well, Silksong is a smaller indie with a different story, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 was a Herculean project from a larger-than-average team. Still, an absolutely incredible game, though. But I'd say that Expedition 33 is Game of the Year because of the story behind it. Everyone loves an underdog taking on the Titans and somehow winning.
That is true.
But I think it's also because we want to believe.
Yes,
we all have games that disappointed us completely, that shattered our faith in large-scale development.
God, this game.
So that's why a story of a bunch of ex-Ubisoft devs. I mean, Guillaume wasn't even a core dev. He was a brand manager. Their lead writer joined via Reddit. It was their first industry gig. The composer was found on SoundCloud. And it's a team of under 50 total. So whenever the story got out, it resonated. It was experienced devs mentoring newcomers. It actually worked. It was a feel-good narrative, but one that was able to target the specific way we've all felt left down by gaming. But that's not all that made it compelling. You see, this team struggled for funding. They turned to friends and family. Sandfall Interactive even claims that the budget was around 10 million. So basically, outsourcing plus team discipline kept their costs contained. It was a scrappy and cheap game, but it looked like the best of the industry because of how far our tech has came. Right? Photoreal environments, award-winning actors, high-fidelity models with an aesthetic that's distinctive enough that it doesn't just blend into the usual sea of Unreal Engine 5, even if it could still sometimes run like a UE5 game. The modern tooling means that almost anyone can hit AAA visual fidelity now.
Because of Unreal 5.
Do they have the skill to stand out in some other way? Do they have the artistic skill to actually make good on all of this new tooling?
Well,
now, it's not just that.
Sandfall
did have publisher support. They had a timely Game Pass deal and a compelling pitch about bringing back turn-based RPGs. Of course, turn-based RPGs never really left, but I do see their point. It's been a long time since Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, a game which, of course, Final Fantasy X is a shameless rip-off of, and I'll hear no words to the contrary, which is to say that all that got them in the public eye, but what kept them in the public eye was actually their talent, was the quality of their product. But here's what I think the real story is, right? That's why we've made this video. It's the one that people are latching onto. It's not just small teams make good games. Maybe it's telling us something else. Maybe it's telling us that the AAA model was always broken, and it just got to the stage where it became so broken it's just stopped working. And maybe we all got behind Expedition 33 because in it we see a future, we see hope, and a real alternative. Now that I've said that, well, we need to get into the cold numbers. Look, these games are not cracking the top 10 or 20 best sellers, but they also don't need to. They still have to make their money back, absolutely, but a game doesn't have to sell 10 million copies and appeal to everyone on Earth in order to survive, if it's something like Expedition 33.
That's the problem with AAA gaming. They're trying to cater to everybody. And, you know, take a look at the Assassin's Creed game, how they added, like, a housing system into it, at least the most recent Assassin's Creed game. They added a housing system to it. They added a DLC with Attack on Titan, and they added like cats to pet and whatnot. I'm just kind of like, is this an Assassin's Creed game or is this like an anime life sim game? You know, like what are we doing here? You know, like I don't really know what this game is trying to cater to. Because I thought when Assassin's Creed it was more, you know, the stealthy kind of type, you know, genre of a game where you like, you know, you play as an assassin, you kill people that are important people or so, and you got to find the what was it again in the original one? Like some apple of Eden or something like that. I have no idea, to be frankly honest, but that's what I thought it was the game about. But apparently, it just spiraled out of control and it became, well, whatever the hell it is now. So.
A focused experience that tells a specific
trying to cater to everybody.
No
it's
live
an open
service,
world,
no microtransactions,
as well.
And for a lot of us, that is heartening, and it's what we want to see. And of course, it makes sense.
I'm like, it can be open zone.
We've talked before
it doesn't have to be open
the biggest
world.
Publishers for a long time have been chasing an ever-shrinking audience of high-spending players, the people who will buy every bit of slop that the AAAs throw at them. That's got so bad that it started to drive us away from games. And in the case of Jagex, it quite literally drove so many people away from RuneScape that they decided they needed to revamp their entire business model and cut away a lot of the bullshit because, well, they actually need players for their game. And focusing just the highest paying payers is ultimately a loser's game, because that resource can actually run out if you piss off enough people.
Well, at the end of the day, it's a kind of like a, you know, to cater to the whales or so, it's such a small percentage compared to like the mass of everybody. Plus also you just want people who be playing your game because it looks good on analytic papers, and the shareholders at the end of the day be like, look how many players are playing our game, you know? I'm like, take a look at Monster Hunter at the end of the day. Unfortunately, their analytics for their game specifically is not doing super well, you know? Like it'll spike up again every like title update, but how many of those players are actually going to stick around afterwards is very minimal, you know?
Now, the good news is that all of this has left space for other games to stand out, because they are not competing for the same wallets. For those of us driven away by all that bullshit, it's not like we would either buy Expedition 33 or a bunch of Fortnite skins.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a realization that a lot of us have wallets, and we're willing to take money out of that wallet, but we just want good video game in return.
Yes.
In an ideal world, that's the flywheel of growth that can actually
Don't worry, it's
get
okay.
The
China is already
back.
making some
At least
good games.
the bit of it that we love.
They're already being in the work ons right now.
It is not all just positive. There are a lot of negatives out there, and one of those was Xbox pulling the rug out from under developers like the Romeros. And on them, I do have a pleasant update for you, because they've actually since pivoted.
John Romero's cancel shooter has been saved with fresh redesign inspired by Elden Ring. We're not starting at ground zero. The developer said we can take pieces out of and put it into our brand new indie game. We have a lot of stuff that we can put into the game. The design is completely different, but the team is very excited about the new design. He edited it now a much smaller game than before, but it is more fun for the team as the people working on it are all directors from different departments.
On their game, and they're now rebuilding it with a smaller team and a different scope.
I wouldn't say worst game of the year. I say most disappointed game of the year. That's where I would put Monster Hunter Wilds. It's more disappointing, you know, from the bad optimization to the monsters being ridiculously easy, the story being so annoying, the kid being a shonen warrior, you know, at the end of the day. Like, it's still it's like the gameplay itself is fine, you know. I personally disliked what they did with the heavy bow gun, in my personal opinion. And a lot of other people, you know, have voiced their opinion about their classes. They're like, I'm not really a huge fan of what they did to my class. I prefer the way how Monster Hunter World did certain things, you know, and that's kind of basically it. So it's more on the disappointed side. Plus, also on top of that, let me remind you this was supposed to be a game that was supposed to be celebrated for the anniversary for Monster Hunter. It doesn't really feel like an anniversary game. So it just kind of was more of an insult and a spit to the face kind of anniversary. So, and that's kind of like basically it.
Thankfully, they are still
Hey, Happy
alive.
New Year's, Tonic.
So they've been able to strike it out on their own, almost setting themselves against the big publishers who let them down. That's the sort of story that audiences, like with Expedition 33, love to support. But even with all that said, I know that cynicism exists for a reason.
There'll
very
probably
much
be a
it is the case that just because you're an ex-AAA
a lot
dev,
of people definitely
that
did not
doesn't mean
enjoy
you're
it.
going to succeed. That's something that 2025
okay, buddy,
also
sure,
made
whatever you say. Your mom
clear.
brought
Two of the year's biggest flops came from the ex-leadership of one of the world's most expensive and successful games ever. Leslie Benzies made his name at Rockstar, building GTA. And when he announced his next project as a linear, focused narrative adventure that would buck AAA trends, people got hyped. I mean, hey, same story as Expedition 33. Proof that big companies and management structures just hold creatives back. Well, in that case, perhaps Leslie and his management team were the ones holding people back. Mind's Eye ended up being one of the worst received games of recent years. Of course, not
oh god, this game, it was a game. I'll be honest with you, it was a game. Maybe they're probably the ones at fault or so.
Matching GTA would have been completely fine, but it launched as a bug-ridden, poorly designed, graphically
That's pretty much the worst game of the year.
Months more development. It's now in a far better state, which is testament to the developers involved, but what matters here is the launch.
I would be surprised if they managed to pull a Hello Games with Mind's Eye and update the game 10 years from now. Like literally, the developers like literally just shut up, put their heads down, start working on the game, and fix the game itself, you know? Possibly it could be pretty good, you know? Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. But if they do, hey man, more power to you, I guess, you know? You managed to turn a product that was completely terrible into something better. They ain't doing that. No, I know for a fact they're not doing it, but I'm just saying. That's why I'm just saying it. If they manage to do it, I'd be impressed at the end of the day. If they pull a Hello Games, you know?
Of this game just went kaput. It didn't matter that the studio was full of ex-AAA devs with mountains of experience and with mountains of funding, or that they were chasing a third-person action genre that's long gone and that maybe people would like to see come back. No, the launch sucked. Staff got laid off after it flopped, but management couldn't even do that properly. They seemingly did it in such a messy way that it may have broken UK employment law, so they're now facing lawsuits, whilst the remaining staff are basically just demanding that leadership gets out of their way. So that's one of the ways these studios fall.
That's crazy.
Overconfidence. The assumption that your vision alone is why your AAA blockbusters succeeded. But it's not the only way. And there are other developers in a similar boat who know that. We're much more cautious and have ended up being no more successful. All this year, we've been tracking a group called Dreamhaven. Now, Dreamhaven are founded by Mike Morhaime. Mike Morhaime is one of the co-founders of Blizzard. He is a rich dude, and Dreamhaven was basically full of ex-AAA talent. And whenever they released Sunderfolk, we were excited. It was a distinctive co-op experience that was trying to capture the feeling of board game night. And they'd done it in a fairly innovative way. Like, even the game's purchase model was innovative. Then there's Wildgate. It's a co-op extraction game, I'd say built in the mold of the sorts of games that have been sweeping Steam charts, but with certainly enough of its own twists to stand out. But maybe not stand out in a way that people wanted, because sadly, neither of these things worked.
Oh my... That sure is a dead game, I'm not gonna lie to be holy cow, dude.
Critics liked them. Players liked them, but they just didn't sell. The company ended up telling staff that they just hadn't seen the response that they had hoped for, and layoffs then followed. These were not Mind's Eye. These were solid games. They launched well, but they still couldn't find an audience. They weren't even like another situation with ex-Blizzard developers, of course in the form of Frost Giant and their game, their StarCraft 2 successor, which had a rough launch and now looks to have a questionable at best future. So what we can see is that even in the case of those Dreamhaven games that came out well, the ex-AAA pedigree, the skill, just wasn't enough. They just weren't able to break through. And they weren't alone in failing to break through. Eternal Strands came from BioWare's Mike Laidlaw and a bunch of Ubisoft Quebec veterans.
saw this game.
Then there's Spectre Divide. Spectre Divide had Double Fine and Naughty Dog alumni. It obviously didn't do well. The 100-line Last Defense...
Isn't this game the one that Shroud was backing up or of this one? I'm not too sure. I could be totally be mistaken or so. Isn't this that one game?
Double Fine and Naughty Dog alumni. It obviously didn't do well. The 100-line Last Defense Academy was from the Danganronpa people. Sandfall even gave them a public shout-out because Sandfall, the Expedition 33 devs, did not want to see that game fail. But none of that mattered. Hard-earned prestige, great mechanics just could not combine to guarantee success. And even the tools that helped Expedition 33 can cut the other way, right? We know Expedition 33 was using some AI stuff. One little bit of that did actually get caught into the final game in the form of a poster that was shortly removed and fixed up after launch. Perhaps it was tastefully implemented and allowed the company to do things well. Though obviously we have seen many
I bet you $10 if no one even caught that or so. No one really bat an eye. No one would really care, and it'd still be in the game to this day. Not surprised with the charts. The 2025 Steam look back showed people don't play new games. Yeah, they really don't play new games. That's kind of like also another thing that's the problem too as well.
Other AI stories in the news in the last few days, and of course over this entire year, where it has not always ended up like that. But even forgetting the robots, there is of course also the people, and one way people are involved in games is via outsourcing. Now outsourcing, I need to tell you, is not a universally bad thing. It's actually one of the ways that people can find stable employment without falling to the boom and bust cycle of loads of studios. They do have a good role, and very often a game studio actually will benefit from outsourcing because they will only commit to the outsourcing whenever they've got a good enough brief, a good enough spec for.
Let me see. So Sandfall wanted to prove that indie studios were capable of making prestige games at a fraction of the budget and personnel of larger studios. Sandfall, which said the budget for Claire Obscure was less than 10 million, conserved resources by avoiding the open world trend, of course. After securing fundings from a publisher, Sandfall increased the core team to 30 people, outsourcing battle animations to a small team in Korea, and using external studios for support functions such as localizations and marketing. That's the thing itself, because like they kind of basically outsourced a lot of their stuff, and the problem is a lot of the AAA devs or so are all literally in California, LA, basically, and it's fucking expensive over there, you know? A lot of it is pretty freaking expensive for those studios and everything. But at the same time, it's just better to outsource it to, you know, animations to a small team dev in a different country who actually has a good reputation or so, and all this other shenanigans, you know, so. But instead, they'd rather do it in-house, which there's nothing wrong doing it in-house either, but the problem is how the economy is and how expensive it is in California, and all these studios are pretty, well, at least a good chunk of them are in California, so it's just kind of like it's not feasible to be hiring a lot of these devs, or getting a lot of people anyways, I should say,
for their game. Nothing will kill a game like a company being so large that it's spending its early, mid, whatever production just finding something for people to do, rather than, in a disciplined fashion, making the best game possible. So I'm not against outsourcing, I don't think you should be either, but it doesn't always go well, and the more our industry decides to outsource, especially to regions where there's an economic disparity, the worse things can go. Like with Brandeville Studios. Yeah. They're an Indonesian outsourcing company that were brutally abusing their staff for cheap labor, whilst their Western partners benefited. Even the likes of Naughty Dog. But, you know, it just wasn't something that they knew about. Whenever people talk about cleaning up the human rights of their supply chain, I guess this is the games industry getting a taste of that. Meanwhile, of course, for Sandfall, their outsourcing did seemingly go well, but more things went well. As an example, they got publisher funding at a time when funding is at historic lows for everyone else. Just
AAA also outsources too. It's a mixed mag in that level. The reason Cyberpunk came out broke it was because they outsourced QA testing and they got scammed. And like, yeah, of course you just have to be careful who you outsource it to. But the problem is just like, well, isn't Cyberpunk specifically from, what is it, in like in the European section? I'm just talking about the Californians in general, like just California in general, because a lot of the studios are in California, because it's just so expensive. They've gotten so big as well. They got to pay all these staff people, but then the rent is expensive over there, so they got to increase the payment over there, for them, you know, specifically for that, you know. Hey, cows. Yeah, Poland. There you go. That's the one. Yeah. So there's a lot of like specific algorithms that causes the actual problem of, you know, of it in general. Because remember, right? They hired a bunch of they opened up and hired a bunch of developers during COVID, because there was this big boom or so in COVID, because everyone was staying indoors, everyone was buying video games, everyone was buying all of this other stuff, to you know to kill for the meantime or so. And then that made more profit of them. So they rushed out to open up more studios, open up all of this, and basically look what you got. You got an overinflated studio with a bunch of people in it. And then you got these games that come out that really nobody wants to play them, because because at the end of the day, they specifically hired the wrong people. So they got scammed themselves, besides them getting outsourced to other people. So they got scammed themselves, because they hired these people because they think they were supposed to be good people, because they probably lied on their resume, but at the end of the day, they're not that good. They're not that good at their job, and it's just kind of like it. No, they wanted to get scammed. I don't know about that, Chief. Not if it's like hundreds, millions of dollars on the line. Probably not, in my personal opinion. Take a look at Concord, to be honest. Definitely, Sony is not very happy losing that much money or so on their project for that one. So that's the reason why it's like, I think personally you have to outsource it, but you have to have a more reputable to outsource it to actual individuals. At the end of the day, it's kind of like, it's kind of like that transaction or so specifically, right? When you buy something used or so, you kind of want to buy like something from a specific vendor that has good reputable source, not someone who is like Timmy No Thumbs down the street or so, who's selling the same thing but has no reputable source whatsoever. It's basically the same thing. You gotta outsource it to the right people. If you don't outsource it to the right people, well, of course you're gonna get scammed at the end of the day. What do you expect? It's obvious.
The words or vibes of anyone coming off a major industry event like a Gamescom or a GDC. And there's a good example to back this up. It's a Kickstarted game called Alazra Radiant Echoes, and it is so similar to Expedition 33. It's channeling the energy of beloved classics from Japan. It's got some pretty cool names attached to it. It's also got a bunch of the French involved as well. So you'd think, oh wow, they have got all these Expedition 33 ingredients, and my god, do their screenshots not look gorgeous. But their game got cancelled because they just couldn't get any funding, regardless of how many ex-AAA devs they had, because it turns out team size and cheap tools just don't matter when you cannot pay people. No, you need everything to go right. Yeah. Not everyone is in a Silksong-like situation where the scrappiness and the hard grind of their first game just gave them pure freedom to make the best thing they possibly could. And that is worth remembering as we now go to tee up 2026, the year ahead. By no means is this video shitting in Expedition 33. It's a spectacular success, and it shows what happens whenever the talent, the tools, the timing, the luck, all of those things align.
The passion.
But we also need to be honest about the rest of the industry because Expedition 33 had it all go right. The talent, the funding, the tools, the partners, even a meta-narrative behind the game that made everyone want to root for them because, look, Sandfall in that game kind of are the opposite of what AAA's been giving us vibes-wise for so long. Of course we want to succeed. But they're not the only team capable of that kind of thing. It's just that some of those other teams weren't as lucky, were not able to cut through. There are so many times in this channel where I've covered a game that has not went well, and where people in the comments have just said, holy shit, I wish I knew about that earlier so I could have supported the damn thing whenever it actually mattered. There was a massive problem of discoverability. We've seen the likes of Steam try to improve that, but it just goes to show, whenever we see stories that could be an Expedition 33, and where it seems responsible to back them up, where it doesn't seem like it's snake oil, we really need to get better at backing those teams up. And
I think the only way to back up these specific teams or so is to have certain content creators kind of like promote the games, It's not like normal advertisement doesn't really work or so. I think that, the content creators, the YouTubers, the Twitch streamers, and all this other stuff are basically like the new better, outsourcing. I guess they're just a better advertisement, The stars align for Expedition 33. Anything in the process could have gone wrong, even the outsourcing. Yeah, a lot of things could have gone wrong. Specifically, they definitely hit, they hit the lucky lotto jackpot compared to these other games where, there were ex devs from other studios and they decided to make their own, but unfortunately they didn't get enough exposure, or something completely went wrong, or not enough money to back them up for their project or so, and all this other shenanigans and everything. So it's kind of like what you expect. It's not discovery plummet. It's just they're making games for mythical audiences. To be honest, these specific games, were actually more better compared to their AAA counterparts. To be honest, the AAA counterparts are basically games that are made for mythical audiences. That's the thing. It's definitely the discoverability, because Steam has had a bad reputation of actually giving out actual discoverability for games, in general. They're trying to improve on that specifically, but it's gonna take a while until they actually fix that in general. Like overall, I think it's just specifically that they just need, they need a helping hand for some of these indie games in general. Like I said specifically, like we're making an indie game too as well, but we're not expecting it to sell millions of copies, I personally, gamers as whole need to change their mindset. Back what Ethos said a while back, people stick to the brands they know, even if the brand is ass now. Yeah, like Call of Duty, for example. Call of Duty is like one of the best examples that you could say. People just stick to the branding or something because they know the brand, but they don't like to try anything new. At the end of the day, it's the same thing with the AAA industry. They don't like to make anything new because they know for a fact that the IP might be failing. So they just stick to the regular slop that you guys get every year or every couple years, every 4 years or so, every 8 years or so, depending on the development cycle. And that's just kind of like it, so.
Getting them out there. Because
they can't experiment,
the industry, we need more financial successes for games like this one. And that's because basically you need the luck. But luck is not just a roll of a dice. Luck is really all about causality. Improbable things can happen, but they often don't happen purely randomly. You know the phrase, you make your own luck. You have to go out there in order to be lucky. Now, that's something for developers to think of. But as audiences, we should also think about that as well.
Luck or so in
because
everything,
whenever we share a game that we think is cool,
luck is everywhere.
Us increasing that team's luck surface area. The more we do that, the more chances great games have.
It is. This is that game that Shroud was helping develop or something or whatever with this game or so, or was kind of advertising the game itself or something like that, or as an ambassador of this game. This is that game or so from Shroud. Yeah.
Of actually catching on, and when they do catch
wasn't super
on,
great though.
Then we can prove that the games industry can support more than just live service slop. So that's to say, it's more complicated than just saying, throw off the chains of AAA and you'll be fine. Those chains were real, but so is everything else. However, speaking of chains and the people who forged them, Ubisoft has had the wildest year for any major publisher
I can really
Ubisoft. Family drama, boardroom chaos, honestly, probably enough for a HBO show, just a company tearing itself apart, and madness. If you want to see how all of that's going on, well, there isn't a HBO show, but I think our video does a real good job of it, and you can watch it next.
We'll definitely be taking a look at that, but yeah. Overall, what a great video. I love the video. It was great, fantastic video. I love Belly Lure News. Belly Lure News definitely goes into the actual depth and the crevice of it, That Ubi hack is crazy. I want to see that, to be honest. I'm pretty interested to see that. Maybe we'll take a look at it tomorrow, to be honest. So Ubisoft is crazy. Their last 3 big productions, Avatar, Star Wars, and AC Shadows, were massive flops. Yeah, they pretty much failed with the Star Wars IP. I don't know how you fail with the Star Wars IP, but they managed to do it somehow. But yeah, anyways, that's the end of the video. You guys can comment, like, subscribe, do all that fancy jazzy stuff. Honestly, pretty crazy. But yeah. Anyways, that's the end of the video. And overall, we'll see what happens. And hopefully we'll get some, like, well, it's already happening already. There's already, because China's already making their own version of, like, of the AAA gaming scene, but just better. So be expected that to come out in the future. So, and we are getting the new Black Myth, Zhong Kui, video game already too. Disney's failing the Star Wars IP. Oof. So yeah. Anyways, that's the end of the video. And we'll just have to wait and see. And peace.